was quite a tumult in the Sifta, the hour downstairs. And like, where are all these voices coming from? They're like, they seem more happy than we do. So, I want to, one of my daughters reminded me of a story just to conclude what we were discussing before. Because sometimes people say, oh, we're talking in theory. So I live in a city called, Kislev, New Jersey. And my parents taught me to speak to every human being. My grandfather taught my father that every human being has something worth saying, as we learn in Pirkei Avos. And so that's what I grew up with, speak to everybody. And so I used dry cleaners that no longer does dry cleaning, but I was going to dry cleaners, and the man who worked there was a Spanish fellow. And I got to know him, and I started to ask him about his family and so forth. And he told me, life is really hard. He has a terrible, terrible situation. His mother is a manager in a factory in the neighboring town of Clifton. And tragically, she is so terrified of the reputation of the dangers in the air that she was unable to go back to work even with a mask. Everyone was masked. She was paralyzed. She could not speak. She literally was having a massive psychiatric breakdown. And they were trying to take her to a psychiatrist. They tried to give her medications. And so I listened to this person and I said, really, it's understandable her behavior. If she's been thinking stressful thoughts that the air is dangerous to breathe and people are deadly, then it makes sense the person's going to be paralyzed. So one of my friends, Rabbi has a series of Shar B'tochen. And so I sent this fellow, I said, I'm going to send you some videos. I'm going to send you a video of mine on Tanya. I'll show you the one. I'm going to send you Rabbi Kirk's recording on Shar B'tochen. And I sent them these recordings. And a few weeks later, I came back and I said to her, how's your mother? She's fine, she's at work. What happened? He sat with his mother and he translated my Tanya Shir and Rabbi Hirik's Shar B'tochen into Spanish, word for word. And when she realized that it was her thinking that was distressing her, that the world was however she was going to choose to perceive it, scary or friendly, she actually came out of her entire psychiatric episode and she went back to work and she was able to manage the staff, 30 people in this factory. So the reason I'm telling you that story, it's just so important to realize this is, I'm not speaking from any theory here. I'm not telling you because I went to Top 15 when I'm in Tanya and I tell you this is the solution to all the world's problems. It happens to be because I have real world experience on many different fronts, seeing that if you understand what's underlying the Tanya, that it's really giving us a gift to recognize that we are free to choose our thoughts at any time. And I wanted to just share that story about this lady because it was so moving. And I asked them, well, which videos exactly? He's like sent back, WhatsApp, which videos it was. But really incredible when you give people hope. We live in a time of such despair, such discouragement, despair that we see all around us. And our job is to spread hope. That's the Rebbe's message. And the Maimon that the Rebbe gave out just before Chav Zayin Adar, before Tavshin and Beis, the main focus of the Maimer is for us to realize that we are the Raya Mehemna of the generation. When the Rebbe says that the Moshe Rabbeinu is the Raya Mehemna, what does it mean, Raya Mehemna? It means not just a faithful shepherd, but a shepherd of faith. A person who cares about the people, who cares about the flock, he cares about the people, he wants to nourish and sustain their faith. We all need to nourish and sustain our faith. Every single one of us. That's the job of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rebbe says that we are the Sheish Mois Raglei Ha'am, Sheish Mois Aleph Raglei Ha'am. We're the 600,000 feet of Moshe Rabbeinu. We are the ones that can carry Moshe Rabbeinu to all these places. He says this Pashtusha, the extension of Moshe in every generation. And in every single person, there's a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. So, that's in me. I have the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. The question is, when the Rebbe speaks, am I going to say the Rebbe is speaking to me? He said the Sikha for me. The entire Tanya was written for me. Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Torah on Har Sinai for me. Hopefully you're going to step up to the plate and say it was for you too. But you have to say, you have to come to believe that this was written for me. This is being spoken for me, and it's about me. When he says we are the Shpashtusha, the Moshe Rabbeinu, we are the Raya Mehemna, we are the shepherds of faith, that means me. My job is to shepherd your faith. In a way that's real, that's practical. That when you see what the challenges in your own life and the challenges around you in the world, it's not something that's coming to throw you off track. Because you know, the Heilige Ruzhner says, that the times before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a string of Mamuna across the world, and everyone's going to be hanging on, and the string is going to shake violently. Our job is to help each other hold on. Even when things in the world seem to be the opposite of what he believes, he also says, you want to throw yourself a curveball. He says that when the time before Mashiach comes, you know the famous story about Eliyahu Novi and Har Carmel, that the fire, the Nevi'ah Baal tried to light the fire and it didn't work, and then Eliyahu Novi, the fire came down from heaven, and everyone screamed out, Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim. That's a beautiful story. It's so inspiring. Heilige Ruzhner says when Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be a similar test, and that time the fire is going to come down on the side of the offering of Baal. And we're still going to scream out Hashem Elokim. So in order to be prepared for such times, the Rebbe wants us to be prepared for the coming of Mashiach. He wants us to have rooted in us a emunah that's so strong that nothing can shake us. There's no statistics in the world that can change my opinion on what the right thing to do is. Because my life is not based on statistics. My life is not based on the latest directives from the Mayo Clinic. The life is based on what Torah has to say, what the Eibishter has to say, the Kerech that he puts into each one of us to do the right thing, to go and give a helping hand to every person, to give them encouraging words at every moment in time. When you see your friend is in distress, you give them loving, encouraging words, because we're all in distress at various times. It happens to all of us. We all take these thoughts seriously at some point. But our job is to zan and farnas the emunah. That's the whole job of the Jewish people. And it's not just that we have to zan and farnas and sustain our own emunah. And what does it mean to be a shepherd? So, most of us don't know. So, those of you who haven't visited our house yet, don't know that we happen to have goats. Ask you, come to the house, you know the whole story how I ended up getting goats. But, I had the most incredible experience I'd like to share with you. When you have animals, not as pets, but as real living animals that are my responsibility, that I would take the goats and I would take them outside our fence into the area between the street and the sidewalk to shepherd them so they could eat the grass, save my boys from having to mow the lawn. And what I suddenly realized was that my mind was attentive to every single detail of all the goats. The 4 goats, every single detail. Which blade of grass they were eating, which direction they were going, were they going too close to the road, were they eating, every single detail I had to be on top of because they were my responsibility. But at the same time, my mind became free. Even though I was conscious on that detail, my mind became completely quiet and free on a completely different level I never experienced. And I saw 2 things at that moment in time. I saw what David HaMelech says. I never understood it in reality. Hashem is my shepherd. It's a very nice concept, but until you actually are the shepherd of animals and responsible for their well-being in every single detail, that you begin to see how Hashem is looking after me in every single detail. He's looking how I'm moving my hand right now. He's making sure I'm not coming too close to the sidewalk. He's making sure I'm eating the right food. He's making sure he's taking care of me in every single aspect. And I also saw why our forefathers were shepherds. Because when you're a shepherd, you develop such a ability to care for so many, on so many levels, and at the same time your mind is free to perceive what Hashem's teaching us in this world and what His mission for us and what His vision for us is. So this is all real. Everything I'm talking about is real. This is the real mission of our generation. We're not here to continue this nice Chabad thing for another 150 years. Our job is to bring this to a conclusion. Our job is to sustain and nourish the faith of every single human being. That's what the Rebbe is begging from us, that we would feel devastated. Chosis l'moyer means crushed, devastated, from the thought that there's even one human being in the world that does not know about Hashem. That means the guy in the Bronx right now, or the kid living in an apartment on Empire Boulevard, Jewish or not Jewish. But no matter where they are, we're devastated over the fact that there's someone that we have not yet been able to reach with the knowledge that there's a loving God, there's a shepherd who's taking care of every one of us. That's the job of our generation. We like to talk about how great the Rebbe is. Let me tell you how great the Rebbe is. Kislev Rebbe was an incredible person. Incredible portions that we cannot imagine. He lost his entire wife and children, 11 children in the Holocaust, and he started his family again after the Holocaust. And I have the source of knowing I know his wife, his second wife, his son-in-laws, and his daughter-in-law, the daughters. My daughters went to his school 7 years ago. The Kislev Rebbe in 1979 met Baal Tshuva. And he asked the Baal Tshuva, who are you a Baal Tshuva from? And the young man said, I'm a Baal Tshuva from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So Kislev Rebbe said, let me tell you how great your Rebbe is. Your Rebbe will yet launch a campaign to bring every single human being to know the Eibishter. And in 1980, that's when the Rebbe started to speak non-stop with Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. After he spent the first 30 years trying to get us to get our act together, he knew the time was now that he had to launch us into the offensive, that we had to go and conquer the world. The Jewish people are not the Dir B'Tachtenim. We are not the Tachtenim. We are not the Chutzah, the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov, K'shefutza Manaseh Chutzah. I am not the Chutzah. I am not the Tachtenim, nor are you. The Chutzah and the Tachtenim is this 8 billion human beings that Hashem has created, that the Rebbe says the Eibishter is Baal Rachmanis on every single creature. He's the shepherd of every single human being. So the Kislev Rebbe knew how great our Rebbe is. The greatness of our Rebbe is defined by the fact that he is the one that took upon himself to change the entire world. Not just to build Chabad houses and to build Jewish schools, but to say that every corner of the world can be conquered with the light of Hashem. That's what defines our Rebbe. And he spoke about it non-stop, from Tafshin Mem Aleph. And if you look at the Sichos, the Rebbe says, people ask me, why won't I stop talking about this? The Rebbe spoke about this non-stop. He wanted to save us and save the entire world from any pain of the gullus, of the last minutes of the gullus. He wanted us to live in a place where there be people that are righteous and educated, to know that there's a God in the world, there's an eye that hears and an ear that hears and an eye that sees. And to our great, great, great distress and sorrow, we can see that the Rebbe's words have been implemented to the degree